My son's girlfriend stole $50 case from my safe. When I confronted her, she laughed. Call the police and I'll say you have dementia. I stayed silent, then I made one phone call that ruined her life forever. When I picked up my phone to call the police, my son's girlfriend looked me right in the eye and said with a chilling smile, "Go ahead, I'll tell them you have dementia. Who do you think they'll believe?" The words hit me like a bucket of ice water. I stood there in my own kitchen, holding the phone, watching this 28-year-old woman who had stolen $50,000 from my safe, threaten to destroy my credibility, my relationship with my son, and my entire life. She thought I was just another confused old woman. She was wrong. Before we continue, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to hear my story. If you're comfortable, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now let me tell you my story. My name is Eleanor Morrison. I'm 68 years old. And until that moment, I thought the hardest day of my life had been burying my husband Richard 2 years ago. But standing in my kitchen, watching Vanessa walk out my door laughing after threatening me, I realized something. Grief makes you weak temporarily, but betrayal makes you strong permanently. I had spent 30 years as a senior fraud investigator at Continental Bank. I had tracked down embezzlers, con artists, and white-collar criminals who thought they were smarter than everyone else. And now one of them had made the mistake of targeting me. Let me tell you how I got here. It started 3 months ago on a sunny Saturday afternoon. My son Daniel showed up at my house with a woman I'd never met before. He was 35, had been through a difficult divorce 2 years earlier, and I had been quietly worried about him being alone. So when he called to say he was bringing someone special to meet me, my heart lifted. Every mother wants to see her child happy. "Mom, this is Vanessa," Daniel said as they walked through my front door. She was striking. I'll give her that. Long dark hair, bright smile, dressed in expensive-looking clothes that seemed carefully chosen to look casual. She carried a bouquet of sunflowers. "Mrs. Morrison, it's so wonderful to finally meet you," Vanessa said, handing me the flowers with a warmth that felt rehearsed but convincing. "Daniel talks about you constantly. I feel like I already know you." I invited them in, made coffee, brought out the homemade cookies I'd baked that morning. We sat in my living room, the same room where Richard and I had raised Daniel, where we'd celebrated Christmases and birthdays, where we'd built a life. Verna's complimented everything. The furniture, the family photos on the walls, the garden visible through the window. "This house is beautiful," she said, her eyes moving around the room with an intensity that made me slightly uncomfortable. "It must be worth quite a bit. These old craftsman homes in this neighborhood are so sought after." "It's been in the family for 40 years, I replied, keeping my tone light. "Richard and I bought it when Daniel was just a baby." "And you live here all alone now?" Vanessa asked. Her voice was sympathetic, but her eyes were calculating. I'd seen that look before, in my years investigating fraud cases. It was the look of someone assessing value, measuring opportunity. "I manage just fine," I said. Something in my tone must have registered because Daniel jumped in. "Vanessa's just concerned, Mom. She worries about older people living alone. Her grandmother had a fall last year." "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that," I said, directing my sympathy to Vanessa. "Is she recovering well?" "She passed away 3 months ago," Vanessa said, her eyes suddenly glistening with tears. "It's been very hard. That's why when Daniel told me about you, I felt this instant connection. I miss having that maternal figure in my life." I softened immediately. Grief was something I understood deeply. "I'm so sorry for your loss." The visit continued pleasantly enough. Vanessa asked about my daily routine, my hobbies, whether I had help with the house and yard. She offered to help me set up online banking since it can be so confusing for people who aren't tech-savvy. She suggested Daniel should have a key to my house in case of emergencies. "Mom actually taught me about computers." Daniel laughed. "She was working with digital fraud cases before I even graduated high school." Something flickered across Vanessa's face, so quick I almost missed it. Surprise? Recalculation, but then her smile was back. "That's wonderful. I just know so many people your age struggle with technology." People my age. The phrase hung in the air. I was 68, not 98. I'd retired from a demanding career only 3 years ago. But to someone like Vanessa, apparently anyone over 60 was automatically helpless. As they were leaving, Vanessa hugged me. "I hope we can spend more time together," she said. "I'd love to help you out however I can. I know how overwhelming it can be managing a house this size alone." After they left, I stood in my kitchen feeling unsettled. Daniel called me that evening. "So what did you think of her?" "She seems nice," I said carefully. "How long have you two been dating?" "About 6 weeks. I know it's fast, but Mom, she's amazing. She's been so supportive. She really understands what I went through with the divorce." 6 weeks. And he was already bringing her to meet his mother, talking about her like she was the one. I wanted to be happy for him. I wanted to believe this woman was genuine. But 30 years of investigating people who lied for a living had given me instincts I couldn't ignore. Over the next few weeks, Daniel and Vanessa became regular visitors. Vanessa would show up on weekday afternoons, always with some excuse. She'd baked extra cookies and thought I might like some. She was in the neighborhood and wanted to check on me. She had questions about Daniel's childhood and wanted to hear stories. I tried to be welcoming. I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt, but I noticed things. The way her eyes would linger on my jewelry when I wore my mother's pearls. The way she'd casually ask about my finances, disguising the questions as concern. "Do you have someone helping you manage your investments?" I worry about older people being taken advantage of by financial advisors. One afternoon she arrived when I was coming back from the bank. I'd withdrawn $50,000 in cash, money I'd been saving for a specific project. Richard had been restoring a 1967 Mustang before he died. It was in storage, nearly complete, and I'd finally found someone who could finish the work. It was my gift to Daniel for his 36th birthday next month. A connection to the father he'd lost. "Wow, that's a lot of cash," Vanessa said, watching me carry the bank envelope into the house. "Is everything okay?" I shouldn't have told her. Looking back, I can see that clearly. But I was trying to trust her, trying to accept her into our family. "It's for a surprise for Daniel. His father's old Mustang. I'm having it finished." "That's so sweet," Vanessa said. "But Eleanor, is it safe to keep that much cash in the house? You should put it somewhere secure." "I have a safe," I said. "It'll be fine there until I need it." "A safe? That's smart. Where do you keep it?" I pointed toward my bedroom. "In my closet. It's bolted to the floor. Richard installed it years ago." She nodded, absorbing this information. Then she changed the subject. Started asking about Daniel's childhood again. I thought nothing of it at the time. 2 weeks later, Daniel called to ask if Vanessa could borrow my spare key. "She wants to drop off some groceries for you while we're both at work." "She's so thoughtful, Mom. She really cares about you." I hesitated. Something felt wrong. But Daniel sounded so happy, so hopeful. He'd been through so much pain with his divorce. How could I deny him this happiness over a vague feeling of unease? "Sure," I said. "That's very kind of her." Daniel came by that evening and I gave him the spare key to give to Vanessa. He hugged me. "Thanks, Mom. I know you two are going to be really close. She keeps saying how much she wishes her own mother was more like you." After he left, I stood in my kitchen feeling a cold dread I couldn't explain. I had handled fraud investigations involving millions of dollars. I had interviewed career criminals. I had testified in federal court. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just made a terrible mistake. The next day, I did something I'm not proud of, but something my instincts demanded. I bought a small security camera online, the kind that looks like a smoke detector. I installed it in my bedroom, positioned to capture anyone who entered. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was projecting my professional experience onto an innocent woman, but I activated the camera anyway. 3 days later, I had a doctor's appointment. A routine checkup, nothing serious. I was gone for about 2 hours. When I came home, everything looked normal. The house was undisturbed. Nothing seemed out of place. But something made me check my bedroom. The closet door was slightly ajar. I always closed it completely. Always. My heart started pounding as I opened it fully. The safe door was open. I moved forward in a daze, already knowing what I would find. The safe was empty. All $50,000 was gone. The cash I'd withdrawn for Daniel's birthday gift, for finishing his father's car, for creating a moment of joy in a life that had seen too much loss. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone and opened the security camera app. The footage was crystal clear. At 10:47 a.m., my front door opened. Vanessa walked in, moving with purpose. She headed straight to my bedroom, opened the closet, and knelt in front of the safe. She knew the combination. I watched in horror as she entered it without hesitation, without having to try multiple numbers. She must have watched me open it one of the times she'd been in my house. She'd been planning this from the beginning. The camera captured everything. Vanessa removing the cash, counting it, putting it in her large purse. She looked around my bedroom, checking if anything else was worth taking. She picked up my mother's pearl necklace from my dresser, examined it, then put it back. Not valuable enough, apparently. Then she walked out, locking my front door behind her. The entire theft took less than 4 minutes. I sat on my bed watching the footage again and again. The betrayal was so calculated, so cold. This wasn't an impulse. This was a planned operation. She'd befriended my son, charmed me, gained my trust, obtained access to my home, learned the location and combination of my safe, and waited for the perfect opportunity. I grabbed my phone to call the police. My finger was hovering over the emergency call button when my phone rang. It was Vanessa. "Hi Eleanor, I just wanted to check on you. How was your doctor's appointment?" Her voice was cheerful, concerned, exactly the way it had been for weeks. The audacity was breathtaking. "It was fine," I said, my voice tight. "Actually, Vanessa, I need you to come over right now. We need to talk." "Oh? Is everything okay? You sound upset." "Just come over, now." She arrived 20 minutes later, her face arranged in an expression of concern. "Eleanor, what's wrong? You sounded so stressed on the phone." I stood in my kitchen, the security camera footage ready on my tablet, my phone in my hand. "Where's my $50,000? Her face transformed so quickly it was like watching a mask drop. The concerned, caring expression vanished, replaced by something cold and calculating. Then she laughed. She actually laughed. "What $50,000, Eleanor? Are you feeling confused today? The $50,000 you stole from my safe this morning, I know you took it." She tilted her head, her eyes narrowing. "Eleanor, honey, I think you might be having some memory issues. Have you talked to your doctor about this? Confusion, memory loss, these are serious symptoms in people your age." "I'm not confused. You took my money. I'm calling the police right now." I raised my phone, but Vanessa stepped forward, her voice dropping to something almost friendly, almost pitying. "Go ahead, Eleanor, call them. Please do." She pulled out her own phone and held it up. "And I'll show them all the text messages Daniel and I have been exchanging about your declining mental state. I'll show them how worried we've been about you living alone. I'll tell them how you've been accusing me of things, getting confused about where you put things, forgetting conversations we've had." My blood ran cold. "I'll tell them you probably spent that money and forgot about it. Or maybe you hid it somewhere and can't remember where. Or maybe," she leaned in close, her smile vicious, "maybe you never had it at all, and this is just another confused fantasy from a lonely old woman whose mind is going." "Daniel will never believe that. Won't he?" Vanessa's laugh was cruel. "Eleanor, I've been laying the groundwork for weeks. Daniel is already worried about you. He's already questioning whether you should be living alone. One phone call from me expressing concern about this bizarre accusation, and he'll be convinced you need professional care." "I have you on camera," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Really?" A 68-year-old woman who can barely work her TV remote figured out how to install and monitor security cameras? Who's going to believe that? Or wait, let me guess, you'll say you did it because you were suspicious of me, which means you were already paranoid and confused before anything happened. That actually helps my case. She moved toward the door, then turned back one more time. "Here's what's going to happen, Eleanor. You're going to realize you can't prove anything. I'll keep dating Daniel. We'll keep visiting you. And you're going to smile and pretend everything is fine. Because if you don't, if you make any accusations, if you cause any problems, I will make it my mission to convince Daniel that you're losing your mind and need to be put in a facility. You can't. Who do you think they'll believe? Eleanor? A young woman with genuine concerns about her boyfriend's aging mother? Or a confused old lady making wild accusations she can't prove? You're all alone in this house. No husband. No close friends nearby. Just your son who already thinks you're getting forgetful." She walked toward the door, then paused one more time. "Oh, and thank you for the money. It's going toward a very nice vacation Daniel and I are planning. I'll make sure to take lots of pictures to show you." The door closed behind her with a soft click. I stood in my kitchen alone, my phone still in my hand. My entire body was shaking. The violation of the theft was bad enough, but the threat, the calculation, the sheer cruelty of it was something else entirely. For about 5 minutes I cried. I let myself feel the pain, the betrayal, the fear. I had been through grief when Richard died. I had been through the loneliness of an empty house. But this was different. This was someone deliberately hurting me, deliberately stealing from me, and then threatening to destroy my relationship with my only child, if I fought back. Then I stopped crying. I wiped my face, made myself a cup of tea, and sat down at my kitchen table. The same table where Richard and I had solved problems for 40 years. The same table where I'd reviewed fraud cases, piecing together evidence, finding patterns, building investigations that put criminals in prison. Vanessa had made several miscalculations. First, she assumed that because I was 68 I was helpless. Second, she assumed that because I was someone's mother I was soft. Third, and most critically, she had no idea what I used to do for a living. I pulled out my laptop and opened an old file I hadn't looked at in years. My contact list from Continental Bank. Names, phone numbers, email addresses, people I'd worked with for 3 decades. People who knew exactly what I was capable of. My hands had stopped shaking. I felt something I hadn't felt in 2 years. Since before Richard died, I felt purposeful, focused, clear. Vanessa wanted me to be afraid. She wanted me to stay silent. She had just made the biggest mistake of her life. I scrolled through my contact list until I found the name I was looking for, Robert Hayes. We'd worked together for 15 years. He'd handled internal theft investigations at Continental before leaving to start his own private investigation firm. We'd kept in touch sporadically after I retired. The occasional email or holiday card. I looked at the clock. 3:30 p.m. Robert would still be at his office. I picked up my phone and dialed. Eleanor Morrison? His voice was surprised but warm. I haven't heard from you in months. How are you? Robert, I need your help. I need a complete background investigation on someone and I need it done quietly. There was a pause. Robert knew me well enough to know I didn't make requests like this lightly. What's going on? Someone stole $50,000 from me. When I confronted her, she threatened to claim I have dementia if I go to the police. She's dating my son and she's been setting the stage for weeks to make everyone believe I'm mentally declining. Jesus, Eleanor, who is this person? Her name is Vanessa Miller. At least, that's what she's calling herself. I need to know everything. Past relationships, previous addresses, criminal history, everything you can find. You think she's done this before? I know she has. Robert, I watched her on security footage. This wasn't amateur hour. This was professional. She knew exactly what she was doing. Robert's voice changed, becoming the focused investigator I remembered. Send me everything you have. Name, date of birth if you know it. Phone number, address. I'll start pulling records immediately. But Eleanor, if you have footage of the theft, she's threatened to destroy my credibility if I go to the police. She's been manipulating my son, making him think I'm confused. I need to know who I'm dealing with before I make my next move. Understood. I'll have a preliminary report for you in 48 hours. After I hung up, I sat for a long moment, staring at my phone. Then I opened my text messages and found the thread with Daniel. His last message was from 3 days ago. Lunch next week. Vanessa wants to take you to that new Italian place you mentioned. Vanessa wants to take you. Of course she did. Another opportunity to play the devoted girlfriend, to cement her position, to make any future accusation I made seem even more absurd. I texted back. That sounds lovely. Let's plan for Tuesday. I needed to act normal. I needed to give Robert time to investigate. And I needed to be very, very careful about my next steps. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying the confrontation in my kitchen. Vanessa's cold smile, her absolute confidence that she'd gotten away with it. She probably had gotten away with it before, probably multiple times. The next morning, my phone rang early. It was Daniel. Mom. Hey, Vanessa mentioned she stopped by yesterday. She said you seemed a bit upset, confused about some money. Is everything okay? My stomach dropped. She'd already started, not even 24 hours after stealing from me, and she was already poisoning my son against me. I'm fine, honey. I was just trying to balance my accounts and got frustrated. You know how bank statements can be confusing. Mom, you worked in banking for 30 years. I know, but I'm out of practice. It's nothing to worry about. Vanessa's concerned about you. She thinks maybe you should have someone helping you with finances. I could look at your accounts if you want. Make sure everything's in order. That's not necessary, Daniel. Everything's fine. Are you sure? Because Vanessa said you accused her of taking money. Mom, that's a pretty serious accusation to make. There it was. The seed of doubt, planted and already growing. I didn't accuse her of anything, I was just confused about a withdrawal. It's all sorted out now. Okay. Daniel didn't sound convinced. Well, we're still on for Tuesday, right? Vanessa's really excited about lunch. Of course. I'm looking forward to it. After we hung up, I sat on my bed, my hands clenched into fists. She was good. Very good. Within 24 hours of the theft, she'd already started the narrative that I was confused, making false accusations, potentially declining mentally. By the time Robert's investigation was complete, how much more damage would she do? I forced myself to breathe slowly, to think strategically. I had spent 3 decades building fraud cases. The key was always patience. Rush the investigation and you miss evidence. Rush the confrontation and the suspect has time to create alternative explanations. The best cases were built slowly, methodically, with overwhelming evidence that left no room for doubt. That's what I needed to do now. Build a case so strong that when I finally revealed it there would be no question, no room for Vanessa to manipulate the narrative. I opened my laptop and created a new folder, Vanessa Investigation. I uploaded the security footage from the theft. I started a timeline document, noting every interaction I'd had with Vanessa, every question she'd asked, every piece of information she'd gathered. I documented the date I'd given Daniel the spare key, the date I'd withdrawn the cash, the date of the theft. Then I did something I hadn't done in my investigative career. I made myself a subject of my own documentation. I went to my doctor's office and requested a complete cognitive evaluation. I called my bank and got statements for the past year, highlighting that every transaction was logical and accounted for. I gathered evidence of my own competency, preparing for the battle I knew was coming. On Tuesday I met Daniel and Vanessa at Bella Roma, the Italian restaurant I'd mentioned wanting to try. Vanessa hugged me like we were old friends, like she hadn't stolen $50,000 from me 4 days ago. Eleanor, you look wonderful, how are you feeling? I'm well, thank you. We sat down, ordered food. Vanessa dominated the conversation, telling stories about her day, asking Daniel about his work. She was charming, attentive, the perfect girlfriend. I watched her performance with a clinical detachment I'd developed over years of interviewing suspects. Eleanor, Daniel mentioned you were having some trouble with your bank statements, Vanessa said during dessert, her voice dripping with concern. I'm pretty good with finances. I'd be happy to help you organize everything if you'd like. That's very kind, but unnecessary. I sorted it out. Are you sure? Because Daniel and I were talking and we think it might be good for you to have a little more support. This house is so big for one person. Have you ever thought about downsizing, getting a condo, something easier to manage? There it was. She wasn't just trying to steal my money. She was positioning to take more. My house, probably. My assets. Everything. I'm quite happy where I am, I said firmly. Of course. I just worry about you, that's all. You're so important to Daniel, which means you're important to me too. I smiled at her across the table, a genuine smile that seemed to confuse her for a moment. That's very sweet, Vanessa. I'm glad Daniel has someone who cares so much. Because I knew something she didn't. Robert Hayes was at that very moment pulling every piece of information about her that existed in public records. And in 24 hours I would know exactly who Vanessa Miller really was. The next afternoon my phone rang. Robert. Eleanor, I'm sending you an encrypted file. You're going to want to be sitting down when you read it. My heart started pounding. What did you find? Vanessa Miller isn't her real name. Or rather, it's one of several names she's used. I found records for Veronica Mills in Nevada, Natasha Moore in Arizona. Same woman, same pattern. She targets men with elderly mothers, gets close to the family, gains trust, steals cash and valuables, then disappears before anyone realizes what happened. Oh my God. There are police reports, Eleanor. 3 of them. One in Las Vegas, one in Phoenix, one in Portland. The victims were all women in their 60s and 70s. The amount stolen ranged from $30,000 to $75,000. In each case the woman tried to report the theft, but Vanessa had laid groundwork suggesting the victim was mentally declining. No arrests were ever made because by the time the family sorted through the confusion Vanessa was long gone. I felt sick. She's done this before, multiple times. I talked to one of the victims, Mrs. Patricia Chin in Portland. Vanessa dated her son for 3 months, stole $45,000 in jewelry and cash, then vanished. When Mrs. Chin reported it, Vanessa had already told the son that his mother was getting paranoid and delusional. The son actually testified against his own mother, saying she'd been confused lately. The case fell apart. Does Patricia Chen's son know the truth now? Yes. But it took 8 months and a private investigator hired by Patricia's brother to prove it. By then, Vanessa was in another state, using another name, targeting another family. Eleanor, this woman is a professional con artist. She's good at this. Send me everything. Every police report, every victim statement, everything. Already done. Check your email. But Eleanor, there's something else. What? She's escalating. The gaps between her cons are getting shorter. Las Vegas to Phoenix was 18 months. Phoenix to Portland was 11 months. Portland to your city is only 7 months. And the amounts are increasing. She's getting more confident, more aggressive. After I hung up, I opened Robert's email. The file was extensive. Photos of Vanessa with different hair colors, different styles. Police reports detailing the thefts. Statements from the victims. It was all there, a clear pattern of predatory behavior targeting vulnerable elderly women. But it was the victim statements that affected me most. Mrs. Patricia Chen, my son didn't believe me. He thought I was losing my mind. It destroyed our relationship for almost a year. Mrs. Dorothy Sanders from Phoenix. She made me doubt my own memory. I started to wonder if I really was getting dementia. Mrs. Linda Martinez from Las Vegas. I felt so stupid. I thought she cared about me. I thought I was getting a daughter-in-law who would be there for me. Instead, I got a thief who almost destroyed my relationship with my son. These women's stories could have been mine. In fact, they were almost mine. The only difference was that I had 30 years of fraud investigation experience. And enough paranoia to install a security camera. I spent the rest of the afternoon reading every document Robert sent. I studied Vanessa's pattern, her methods, her techniques. She was smart. I'd give her that. She knew exactly how to exploit the vulnerabilities in family dynamics. She knew how to turn sons against mothers. She knew how to use society's ageism against her victims. But she'd made one critical error. She'd chosen a victim who knew how to build a case. That evening I got another call. This time it was Daniel. Mom, I need to talk to you about something serious. My stomach tightened. What is it? Vanessa and I have been talking. We're worried about you. We think you might be experiencing some cognitive decline. Daniel? I'm fine. Mom, you accused Vanessa of stealing. You're having trouble with your bank statements. Last week you called me twice about the same thing, and you didn't remember we'd already talked about it. That was a lie. I'd called him once and we'd never discussed it. But of course that's what Vanessa had told him. That didn't happen, Daniel. See, that's the thing. You don't remember. Mom, I love you. I want what's best for you. Vanessa and I think it might be time to look at some assisted living facilities. Just to visit. Just to see what's available. My blood ran cold. This was it. This was Vanessa's endgame. Get me declared incompetent. Get me moved into a facility and then Daniel would sell my house and manage my assets. Assets that Vanessa would have access to. I don't need assisted living, Daniel. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself. We just want to look, Mom. There are some really nice places. You'd have your own apartment, but there would be people to help you with meals, with medications, I don't take any medications except vitamins. Daniel, I don't need help with meals. I don't need assisted living. Will you at least think about it? For me, I'm worried about you. I closed my eyes. I could hear Vanessa in the background, probably listening to every word, probably coaching Daniel on what to say. Okay, I said slowly. I'll think about it. But Daniel, before we talk about this again, I need you to come over. Just you. There's something I need to show you. What is it? Just come over. Tomorrow evening. Please. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen and made a decision. I couldn't wait any longer. Vanessa was moving too fast, pushing too hard. If I let this continue, Daniel might actually sign papers committing me to a facility before I could prove what Vanessa really was. I called Robert back. I need to move faster. Can you get statements from the other victims, written statements or recorded interviews? I can try. What are you planning? I'm going to show Daniel everything. The security footage, your investigation, the statements from other victims. I'm going to prove to him exactly who Vanessa is. Eleanor, be careful. If she realizes you're building a case against her, she could disappear, or worse, she could escalate her campaign to have you declared incompetent. She's already doing that. Daniel just called to say he and Vanessa want me to look at assisted living facilities. Robert swore quietly. She's good. She's really good. So am I. Robert. So am I. Over the next 24 hours, Robert worked his contacts. He got recorded phone interviews with Patricia Chen and Dorothy Sanders. Both women agreed to talk. Both were eager to help prevent what happened to them from happening to another victim. I listened to Patricia's interview 3 times. She was so nice at first, Patricia said, her voice shaking. She called me Mom. She said she wished her own mother was like me. And then she stole $45,000 and made my son think I was crazy. I almost lost him. I almost lost my only child because of that woman. Dorothy's interview was similar. She knew exactly what she was doing. Every question she asked, every comment she made, it was all preparation for the theft. And when I caught her, she'd already convinced my son I was getting confused. He didn't believe me. My own son didn't believe me. I compiled everything into a single presentation. The security footage of Vanessa stealing from my safe. Robert's investigation showing her previous identities and crimes. The police reports from 3 different states. The victim statements. Medical records showing my perfect cognitive function. Bank statements proving my financial competency. It was 67 pages long. It was irrefutable. But I needed one more thing. I needed witnesses who would validate what I was about to show Daniel. Because I knew Vanessa would try to spin this, would try to claim I'd fabricated the evidence or that I'd misunderstood or that I was being manipulated by someone else. I called my attorney, James Mitchell. I'd used him for my estate planning when Richard died. He was thorough, careful, and had known me for 15 years. James, I need your help with something unusual. I explained the situation, the theft, Vanessa's threats, her criminal history, Daniel's manipulation. James listened without interrupting. Eleanor, this is serious. This is elder abuse and fraud. You should go to the police immediately. I tried. Vanessa threatened to claim I have dementia. She's been laying groundwork with Daniel for weeks. But you have evidence. I do now, but I need Daniel to see it with witnesses present. I need him to understand that I'm not confused, that I'm not being manipulated. I need him to see the truth with credible witnesses who can confirm I'm mentally competent. What do you need from me? I need you to be present tomorrow evening when I show Daniel everything. I need you as a witness, and I need you to validate my competency if Vanessa tries to claim otherwise. Done. What time? I also called Officer Linda Reyes at the local police department. Linda and I had worked together years ago when Continental Bank had partnered with the police on fraud training. I'd helped train officers on how to recognize and investigate financial crimes. Linda had kept in touch over the years. Eleanor Morrison, I haven't heard from you in forever. How are you? Linda, I need your help. Not officially, not yet, but I need you to be present for something tomorrow evening. I explained the situation again. Linda's response was immediate. That's elder fraud, Eleanor. That's a crime. You should file a report. I will, but I need my son to see the evidence first. If I go to the police now, Vanessa will disappear, and Daniel will never believe me. He needs to see who she really is. I'll be there, off duty as a friend. But Eleanor, after tomorrow we're filing official charges. This woman needs to be arrested. Agreed. The next evening, I set everything up in my dining room. My laptop connected to the large TV screen, the 67-page report printed and bound, extra copies for everyone. I made coffee, set out cookies I'd baked that morning, and tried to keep my hands from shaking. James arrived first at 6 p.m., then Linda at 6:15. Finally at 6:30, Daniel's car pulled into my driveway. I watched through the window as he got out alone. Good. I'd specifically asked him to come without Vanessa, though I wasn't sure he'd listened. I opened the door before he could knock. Hi, honey, come in. Daniel walked into my dining room and stopped when he saw James and Linda. Mom, what's going on? Why is your attorney here? And Officer Reyes? Please sit down, Daniel. There's something I need to show you. Mom, if this is about assisted living, I really think... Daniel, please. Just sit down and watch. He sat reluctantly, looking uncomfortable and confused. I picked up the remote control for the TV. A week ago, Vanessa stole $50,000 from my safe. I'm going to show you the security footage. Then I'm going to show you who Vanessa really is. Mom? No. Not this again. You can't keep accusing. Watch. I pressed play. The security footage filled the screen. Crystal clear video of Vanessa entering my house with the key Daniel had given her, walking directly to my bedroom, opening my closet, kneeling in front of the safe, and entering the combination. Daniel's face went white. That can't be. She wouldn't. Keep watching. The footage showed Vanessa removing the cash, counting it, putting it in her purse. The timestamp in the corner showed the date and time. The theft took 4 minutes. Mom, there has to be an explanation. Maybe you asked her to. I didn't ask her to do anything. She stole it. And Daniel, she's done this before. I switched to the presentation Robert had prepared. Photos of Vanessa with different hair colors, different names, police reports from Las Vegas, Phoenix and Portland, details of 3 previous thefts, 3 previous elderly victims, the same pattern repeated. This can't be real, Daniel whispered. Vanessa wouldn't. She's not. Daniel, I'm going to play you something now. These are recordings of 2 of her previous victims. I want you to listen. I played Patricia Chen's interview first. Her voice came through the speakers, steady and sad. She made my son think I was losing my mind. She stole $45,000 from me, and then she made my son doubt me. It took 8 months to prove the truth, and by then she was gone. Then Dorothy Sanders' interview. She's a professional. She knew exactly what she was doing. Every question, every comment, it was all preparation for the theft. Daniel was staring at the screen like he was watching his entire world collapse. I don't understand. She said she loved me. She said she wanted a future with me. Daniel, Linda Reyes said gently, your girlfriend is a con artist. A very good one. She's done this at least 3 times before. She targets men with elderly mothers. She gains access to the home, steals cash and valuables, and when she's caught she claims the victim is mentally confused. But she wouldn't. We've been dating for 3 months. We've talked about getting engaged, she said. His voice trailed off as the full realization hit him. Everything Vanessa had said, everything she'd done, it had all been an act. A performance designed to gain access to me and my assets. She told you I was getting confused, didn't she? I asked quietly. Daniel nodded slowly. She said you'd been forgetting things, that you'd accused her of stealing when you'd probably just misplaced the money. She said you'd called me about the same thing multiple times without remembering we'd already talked. She said. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with tears. She was lying about all of it. Yes. And I believed her. I believed her over you. My own mother. She's very good at manipulation, Daniel. That's how she's gotten away with this multiple times. James spoke up. Daniel, I've known your mother for 15 years. I've reviewed her financial records, her medical records, her cognitive evaluation from last week. She is completely competent. There is no cognitive decline, no confusion, no memory issues. Everything Vanessa told you was a lie designed to isolate your mother and make future theft easier. Daniel put his head in his hands. I almost signed papers to put you in assisted living. Vanessa said she'd found a place that we could tour it this weekend. She said it was for your own good. The room was silent. The full picture was clear now. Vanessa had been planning to steal more, much more. Once I was in a facility, Daniel would have sold my house, managed my assets, and Vanessa would have had access to all of it. Where is she now? Linda asked. At her apartment, I think. She wanted to come tonight, but Mom specifically said just me. Good, Linda said, because tomorrow morning, we're filing official charges, and then we're going to arrest her. Daniel looked up sharply. Arrest her? She'll run. As soon as she knows you're coming, she'll disappear. Not if she doesn't know we're coming, Linda said. Not if she still thinks she's gotten away with it. I had been silent through most of this, letting the evidence speak for itself. Now I spoke, looking directly at my son. Daniel, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Anything, Mom. Did Vanessa ever ask about my will? About what would happen to my estate when I died? His face confirmed the answer before he spoke. Last week, she asked if you'd updated it recently. If I was the beneficiary, she said she was just concerned about making sure your affairs were in order. Of course she had, because that was the final stage of her plan. Isolate me, have me declared incompetent, move me into a facility, and then wait for the inevitable. She'd probably been planning to speed up that timeline somehow. I'm so sorry, Mom, Daniel said, his voice breaking. I should have trusted you. I should have known something was wrong. She's a professional, Daniel. She does this for a living. She knows exactly how to manipulate family dynamics, how to use a son's concern for his mother against both of them. What happens now? He asked. Linda answered. Tomorrow morning Eleanor comes to the station and files a formal report. We use the security footage, the investigation report, and the statements from previous victims to get a warrant for Vanessa's arrest. We coordinate with police in the other states where she committed similar crimes. And then we arrest her. Will she go to prison? Daniel asked. If Eleanor testifies, if the other victims testify, and if we can prove the pattern of fraud across multiple states. Yes, she'll go to prison. That night, after everyone left, Daniel stayed for another hour. We sat in my kitchen, the place where this whole nightmare had started with Vanessa's threat a week ago. I can't believe I almost let her destroy our relationship, Daniel said. I actually thought about signing papers to commit you to a facility. My own mother. She's very good at what she does, Daniel. She's had years of practice. That doesn't make me feel better. I should have known. I should have seen the signs. What signs? She was charming, caring, thoughtful. Those are qualities we want in a partner. You can't blame yourself for not seeing through a professional con artist. But you saw through her. I had advantages you didn't. 30 years investigating fraud. And Daniel, I wanted to be wrong. I wanted to believe she was genuine, that you'd found someone who would make you happy. He shook his head. When she talked about you, about your confusion, she sounded so concerned, so genuinely worried. How do people learn to lie like that? Practice, I said simply. Lots and lots of practice. The next morning, Linda picked me up at 9:08 a.m. We drove to the police station together. I'd brought everything, the security footage, Robert's investigation, the victim statements, my medical records. Linda had already prepared the paperwork for the report. The process took 3 hours. I gave a statement detailing everything from the first meeting with Vanessa to the theft to her threats. I turned over all the evidence. Linda worked with the detective in charge of fraud cases to start coordinating with police departments in Nevada, Arizona, and Oregon. Mrs. Morrison, the detective said when we were done, this is one of the most well-documented cases I've ever seen. Most elder fraud victims don't have this level of evidence. I spent 30 years investigating fraud, I replied. I know what's needed to build a case. We'll get a warrant by this afternoon. We'll coordinate the arrest for tomorrow morning, before she has a chance to realize what's happening. I went home and tried to act normal, tried not to think about what was coming. That evening, my phone rang. It was Vanessa. Hi, Eleanor. I haven't heard from you in a few days. How are you feeling? The audacity was stunning. She'd stolen $50,000 from me, threatened to have me declared incompetent, tried to get Daniel to commit me to a facility, and now she was calling to chat like we were friends. I'm well. Thank you. Great. Daniel and I were thinking about stopping by tomorrow if you're free. We found this wonderful assisted living facility, and we'd love to show you the brochure. Tomorrow isn't good for me. Oh? Do you have plans? Yes, I said calmly. I'm going to watch you get arrested. There was a long silence. What? You stole $50,000 from me, Vanessa? Or should I call you Veronica? Or Natasha? I know who you are. I know what you've done. I know about Patricia Chen, Dorothy Sanders, and Linda Martinez. I know everything. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. Eleanor, I think you're confused again. Maybe we should call Daniel. I have you on security cameras stealing the money. I have a complete investigation into your criminal history. I have statements from your previous victims. I filed a police report this morning. There's a warrant being issued for your arrest right now. Another silence. Then, you can't prove anything. It'll be your word against mine. Actually, I have 67 pages of evidence. Security footage, police reports from 3 states, victim statements, and medical records proving I'm completely competent. You're done, Vanessa. That recording won't hold up in court. I'll say you edited it. Feel free to make that argument to the judge. Oh, and Vanessa, you made one critical mistake. What's that? You chose a victim who spent 30 years investigating people exactly like you. You chose someone who knew exactly how to document fraud, how to gather evidence, and how to build a case. You thought I was just another confused old woman. You were wrong. She hung up without another word. I sat in my kitchen, my heart pounding, and waited. I didn't know if she'd run or if she'd try something desperate. I'd warned Linda that Vanessa now knew about the investigation. Linda had officers do a drive-by of Vanessa's apartment every hour through the night. The next morning at 7 a.m., my phone rang. It was Linda. We arrested her an hour ago. She was packing her car, getting ready to run. We got her. I closed my eyes and felt the tension drain from my body. Thank you. Eleanor, there's something you should know. When we searched her apartment, we found the marked bills from your safe. We also found jewelry and items that matched descriptions from the other victims. She's been keeping trophies. We're coordinating with the other police departments now. What happens next? She's being charged with elder fraud, theft, and several other counts. With your testimony and the testimony from the other victims, the prosecutor thinks we can get multiple counts across state lines. She's looking at serious prison time. 3 weeks later, I sat in a courtroom watching Vanessa's arraignment. She was dressed simply, her hair pulled back, looking nothing like the charming woman who'd visited my home. Daniel sat next to me, still processing the betrayal. The prosecutor laid out the charges: elder fraud in 4 states, theft, identity fraud. The list was extensive. Vanessa's attorney tried to argue that she was a victim herself, that she'd been manipulated, that she'd made mistakes but hadn't committed crimes. The judge wasn't buying it. Miss Miller, the judge said, looking down at Vanessa, you have systematically targeted vulnerable elderly women, gained their trust, stolen from them, and then attempted to destroy their credibility when caught. This shows planning, intent, and a pattern of predatory behavior. Bail is denied. You'll remain in custody until trial. Vanessa turned in her seat and looked directly at me. The charming mask was completely gone. In its place was cold hatred. She'd thought I'd be easy. She'd thought I'd be weak. She'd been wrong. The trial took place 3 months later. I testified, as did Patricia Chen and Dorothy Sanders. We told our stories, showed our evidence, proved the pattern. The jury took less than 4 hours to return a guilty verdict on all counts. The sentencing hearing was 2 weeks after that. The judge looked at Vanessa with obvious disgust. Miss Miller, you have preyed on some of the most vulnerable members of our society. You have exploited trust, manipulated families, and stolen from people who had done nothing but show you kindness. You have shown no remorse, no understanding of the harm you've caused. The judge sentenced her to 5 years in prison with orders to pay restitution to all 4 victims. It wasn't as much time as I'd hoped for, but it was something, and the restitution meant that Patricia, Dorothy, Linda, and I would eventually get our money back. After the sentencing, Patricia Chen approached me in the courthouse hallway. Thank you, she said, gripping my hands. Thank you for having the courage to fight, for having the evidence to prove it, for helping all of us get justice. I'm sorry you went through this, I replied. I'm sorry any of us had to. My son and I are rebuilding our relationship, she said. It's been hard, but we're getting there. He understands now that he was manipulated. That was something, at least. Vanessa had damaged so many relationships, broken so much trust, but those relationships could be repaired, given time. 6 months after Vanessa's sentencing, I received a call from a victim advocate with the State Attorney General's office. Mrs. Morrison, I wanted to let you know that your case has led to some changes. We're implementing new training for law enforcement on elder fraud, particularly cases where the perpetrator attempts to discredit the victim by claiming cognitive decline. We're using your case as a training example. That's good, I said. I hope it helps other victims. It already has. 3 women have come forward with similar cases in the past 2 months. They saw news coverage of Vanessa's trial and realized they'd been victims of similar schemes. They're filing charges now. After we hung up, I thought about that. 3 more women finding the courage to come forward, to fight back, to refuse to be victims. Maybe something good could come from this nightmare after all. Daniel and I worked on rebuilding our relationship too. It took time. He felt guilty for believing Vanessa, for doubting me. I had to repeatedly assure him that he'd been manipulated by a professional, that it wasn't his fault. I should have known, he said one evening over dinner at my house. We'd started having weekly dinners together, a new tradition born from our shared trauma. Daniel, you couldn't have known. She was good at what she did. That's why she'd gotten away with it so many times before. But Mom, you knew something was wrong from the beginning. I had 30 years of training in recognizing fraud. You had a natural desire to believe that someone you cared about was genuine. Those are completely different starting points. I almost let her destroy everything. Our relationship, your reputation, your freedom. Almost. But you didn't. When I showed you the evidence, you listened. You believed me. That's what matters. 1 year after Vanessa's arrest, I spoke at a community center about elder fraud prevention. The room was packed with older adults, their adult children, and social workers. I told my story, showed the warning signs, explained how to protect yourself. The most important thing, I said to the audience, is to trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Document everything, keep records, and never ever let someone make you doubt your own competence. After the presentation, a woman in her 70s approached me. My daughter-in-law has been asking me to add her name to my bank accounts, she said quietly. She says it's just to help me out, to make things easier. But something feels wrong about it. Trust that feeling, I told her. You don't need to give anyone access to your accounts unless you want to, and if she's pressuring you, that's a red flag. I thought I was being paranoid. You're being smart. There's a difference. I watched her walk away looking more confident, more certain of her own judgment. That was the real victory, I thought. Not just putting Vanessa in prison, but helping other people avoid becoming victims in the first place. 2 years after the theft, I got an unexpected letter. It was from Vanessa, forwarded through the prosecutor's office. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity got the better of me. Eleanor, it began. No apology, no greeting, just my name. You ruined my life. You were supposed to be easy. You were supposed to be like the others, confused and helpless. But you weren't. You were smart, and you were vindictive, and you destroyed everything I'd built. I want you to know that I don't regret taking your money. I regret getting caught. The only thing I'm sorry about is underestimating you. I hope you're happy with yourself. You put me in prison. You made sure the other victims came forward. You turned my own mistakes into a federal case. All because you couldn't let it go. But here's what you don't understand. There are hundreds more like me out there. Thousands. Targeting people like you every single day. You stopped me, but you didn't stop the problem. Someone else is stealing from some other old lady right now, and there's nothing you can do about it. Congratulations on your victory. I hope it keeps you warm at night. V. I read the letter twice, then filed it with all the other evidence from the case. She was right about one thing. There were more predators out there, but she was wrong about something too. Her letter wasn't evidence of my vindictiveness. It was evidence of her complete lack of remorse, her continued predatory mindset, and that meant she was exactly where she needed to be. I called the prosecutor and let her know about the letter. This might be useful if she applies for early parole, I said. It shows she hasn't reformed, hasn't learned anything, and still views elderly people as targets. Thank you, Mrs. Morrison. We'll add it to her file. 3 years after Vanessa's arrest, Patricia Chen called me. Eleanor, I have news. They caught another one. Another what? Another con artist using Vanessa's exact playbook. She was targeting my neighbor, but because of the training you helped develop, because of the awareness, the neighbor recognized the pattern and reported it immediately. They arrested the woman before she could steal anything. That's wonderful. It's more than wonderful. It means what we went through mattered. It means other people are being protected. After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where Vanessa had threatened me 3 years ago. I thought about how that moment had felt, how powerless and afraid I'd been, and then I thought about everything that had happened since. I'd built a case that put a professional con artist in prison. I'd helped create training that was protecting other victims. I'd helped 3 other women get justice for what had been done to them. I'd turned my victimization into something useful, something protective. Daniel came by that evening with dinner. Another Tuesday night tradition. How was your day? He asked, unpacking Thai food onto my table. I got a call from Patricia Chen. They caught another predator using Vanessa's methods. That's the 3rd one this year. 4th. There was one in Oregon last month. So your case is actually preventing crimes. Our case, I corrected. You were a victim too. She manipulated you, lied to you, tried to destroy our relationship. But you're the one who built the case. You're the one who fought back. Because I had the training and experience to know how. Not everyone does. We ate in comfortable silence for a while. Then Daniel said, Mom, I've been thinking about that letter Vanessa sent you. The one where she said she hopes you're happy with yourself for putting her in prison. What about it? Are you happy with how it all turned out? I thought about his question. Was I happy? I'd lost $50,000. Though I'd eventually gotten restitution, I'd spent months gathering evidence, testifying, reliving the betrayal. I'd had to confront my own vulnerability, my own fear. But I'd also proven that being 68 didn't mean being helpless. I'd shown that elderly people could be strong, strategic, and effective. I'd helped create changes that were protecting other people. I'd turned my victimization into advocacy. Yes, I said finally, I'm happy with how it turned out. Not that it happened, but with how I responded when it did. You're amazing, Mom. You know that, right? I smiled at my son. I'm just someone who refused to be silent. That's all. But it wasn't all, and we both knew it. I was someone who'd spent 30 years learning how to investigate fraud, and when fraud came to my own door, I'd used every skill I had to fight back. I was someone who'd been threatened into silence and had responded by building an irrefutable case. I was someone who'd been told she was confused and helpless and had proven she was neither. 4 years after Vanessa's arrest, I got another call, this time from Officer Linda Reyes. Eleanor, I wanted to let you know something. Vanessa Miller applied for early parole. The hearing was yesterday. My heart sank. Did she get it? No. The parole board reviewed her file, including that letter she sent you. They decided she showed no remorse, no rehabilitation, and continued to view elderly people as targets. She was denied. She'll serve her full sentence. Thank you for letting me know. There's something else. The other 3 victims all submitted statements for the parole hearing. Patricia Chen, Dorothy Sanders, and Linda Martinez all explained how Vanessa's crimes affected them and why she shouldn't be released. It was powerful, Eleanor. You helped build a community of survivors who refused to be silent. After we hung up, I thought about that phrase. A community of survivors. 4 women who'd been targeted by the same predator, who'd refused to accept the role of helpless victim, who'd fought back and won. That evening, I called Patricia, Dorothy, and Linda. We'd stayed in touch over the years, checking in periodically, supporting each other through the ongoing aftermath of what Vanessa had done to us. Did you hear about the parole hearing? Patricia asked immediately. I did. Linda Reyes called me. Good. She deserved to be denied. She doesn't deserve early release. Thank you for submitting a statement. Of course. We're in this together. We talked for over an hour. The 4 of us on a conference call. We talked about how we were doing, how our relationships with our sons had healed, how we'd moved forward. We talked about the other victims who'd come forward, the training programs, the changes in how law enforcement handled elder fraud cases. You know what I realized? Dorothy said toward the end of the call. She thought we'd be easy targets because we're old. She thought our age made us weak, but we proved that experience makes you strong. That surviving decades of life teaches you things that no 28-year-old predator can match. Amen to that. Linda Martinez added. I'm 73 years old. I've survived a divorce, raised 3 kids alone, built a business from nothing. Some con artist thought she could break me. Please. We laughed together, 4 women who turned victimization into strength. 5 years after Vanessa's arrest, I was asked to testify before a state legislative committee about elder fraud prevention. I wore my best suit, the one I'd worn to Vanessa's trial. I carried a folder with all my documentation, though I'd memorized every word I planned to say. Committee members, I began. 5 years ago, a professional con artist stole $50,000 from my safe, and then threatened to have me declared mentally incompetent if I reported the theft. She nearly succeeded, but she made one critical error. She underestimated me. I told the story start to finish. The theft, the threat, the investigation, the arrest, the trial. I explained how Vanessa had exploited stereotypes about elderly people being confused and helpless. I explained how she'd manipulated family dynamics, turning sons against mothers. But here's what I want this committee to understand, I said, looking at each legislator in turn. Elder fraud isn't just a crime against individuals. It's a crime against families, against communities, against our entire social fabric. When we allow predators to target elderly people, when we don't take their reports seriously because we assume they're confused, we're sending a message that some victims don't matter. The committee passed legislation 3 months later requiring mandatory training for law enforcement on elder fraud, creating a special task force to investigate patterns of abuse and establishing stronger penalties for crimes targeting elderly victims. The governor signed the bill into law 6 months after that. At the signing ceremony, she invited me to stand beside her. This law exists because Eleanor Morrison refused to be silent, the governor said to the assembled press. Because she used her experience, her intelligence, and her courage to fight back against a predator who thought she'd be an easy target. Eleanor, thank you for turning your pain into progress. Afterward, a reporter asked me how it felt to have inspired this legislation. It feels necessary, I said, but I wish it hadn't been necessary. I wish I hadn't had to go through what I went through. I wish Patricia Chen and Dorothy Sanders and Linda Martinez hadn't had to go through it. But since we did, I'm glad we could use our experience to protect others. What would you say to other elderly people who might be targeted by similar schemes? I'd say trust your instincts. Document everything. And remember that your age doesn't make you weak. It makes you experienced, wise, and much more dangerous to predators than they expect. The reporter smiled. More dangerous? Absolutely. I'm 73 years old. I've lived through things that would break people half my age. I've learned skills, built relationships, developed judgment. When Vanessa Miller chose me as her target, she thought she was choosing a confused old woman. She was actually choosing someone who'd spent 30 years investigating people exactly like her. That was the biggest mistake of her life. 6 years after Vanessa's arrest, I received a letter from Patricia Chen's son. Dear Mrs. Morrison, it began, you don't know me well, but I'm the son who almost believed Vanessa's lies about my mother. I'm the one who suggested assisted living. I'm the one who doubted my own mother because a stranger told me to. I'm writing to thank you. Not just for stopping Vanessa, but for showing me what I almost lost. My mother and I have rebuilt our relationship over the past 6 years. I understand now how I was manipulated, how I let societal stereotypes about elderly people cloud my judgment. But more than that, I've learned something from you. I've learned that my mother isn't just my elderly mother. She's a person with skills, experience, wisdom, and strength that I should respect, not patronize. Thank you for fighting back. Thank you for documenting everything. Thank you for building a case that put Vanessa in prison and helped so many other people. You didn't just save your relationship with your son, you helped save mine with my mother too. With gratitude, Marcus Chen. I read the letter twice, then filed it with all the others I'd received over the years. Letters from victims who'd been helped by the training programs. Letters from adult children who'd learned to recognize warning signs. Letters from law enforcement officers who'd successfully prosecuted elder fraud cases. Each letter was a reminder that what happened to me hadn't been meaningless. The pain, the betrayal, the fight. It had all resulted in real change, real protection for real people. 7 years after Vanessa's arrest, she was released from prison. She'd served her full 5-year sentence plus additional time for violations of prison rules. Linda Reyes called to let me know. She's out, Eleanor. She's on parole for 3 years, has to check in weekly, can't leave the state. But I wanted you to be aware. Thank you for telling me. Are you worried? No, I said honestly. She knows what will happen if she comes near me or my family. She knows I'll document everything, build another case, put her back in prison. I'm not afraid of Vanessa Miller anymore. Good, because you shouldn't be. You beat her once, you could do it again. But Vanessa didn't come near me. As far as I know, she left the state after her parole ended, disappeared into another city with another name. Maybe she found a legitimate job. Maybe she went back to her old ways. I didn't know and didn't particularly care. What I cared about was the life I'd built in the aftermath, the advocacy work I was doing, the relationships I'd strengthened, the knowledge that I'd turned victimization into something protective, something useful. 8 years after the theft, I stood in front of another community center audience, telling my story one more time. The audience was mostly elderly women, but there were adult children too, and social workers and law enforcement officers. The most important thing I want you to understand, I said at the end of my presentation, is that being targeted doesn't make you weak. Being victimized doesn't make you helpless. What matters is how you respond. A woman in the front row raised her hand. But Mrs. Morrison, you had special training. You knew how to investigate fraud. What about those of us who don't have that background? You have something equally valuable, I replied. You have life experience. You have instincts honed by decades of interactions with people. You have the wisdom that comes from surviving all the things life has thrown at you. Trust those instincts. Trust that wisdom. And if something feels wrong, seek help from people you trust. Another hand, what if our own children don't believe us? Then you find other witnesses. You document everything. You gather evidence. And you remember that your children might be manipulated. But that doesn't mean you're wrong. Love doesn't require you to doubt yourself. After the presentation, A woman who looked about my age approached me. "Thank you," she said quietly. "My daughter's new boyfriend has been asking about my finances, suggesting I should add him to my accounts for emergencies." Something felt wrong, but I thought I was being paranoid. "You're not paranoid, you're being appropriately cautious. Don't give anyone access to your accounts unless you're absolutely certain it's necessary." "I won't." Hearing your story made me realize I have the right to protect myself, even if it means saying no to my daughter. I watched her walk away with her shoulders straighter, her step more confident. That was the real victory. Not putting Vanessa in prison, not even the legislation or the training programs. The real victory was helping other people find their own strength, their own voice, their own refusal to be victims. That night, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of tea, thinking about everything that had happened in the 8 years since Vanessa had stolen from me and threatened me into silence. I thought about how that moment had felt, standing in this same kitchen believing I had no options, no power, no way to fight back. And then I thought about everything I'd learned since. That being 68 didn't mean being helpless. That having lived 7 decades meant having 7 decades of experience, wisdom and strength. That the skills I'd learned over 30 years in fraud investigation were exactly what I needed when fraud came to my own door. I thought about Patricia, Dorothy and Linda, 3 women I'd never met who'd gone through the same betrayal. I thought about how we'd come together, supported each other, helped each other heal. I thought about the legislation that now protected elderly victims, the training programs that helped law enforcement recognize and investigate elder fraud, the hundreds of people I'd spoken to over the years, helping them find their own strength. My phone rang. It was Daniel. "Hey Mom. Just calling to say good night. Love you." "Love you too, honey. You know what I was thinking about today?" "What's that?" "How lucky I am that you're my mother. Not just because you're smart and strong, but because you taught me something really important." "What did I teach you?" "That underestimating people is always a mistake. Especially underestimating people based on age, or appearance or assumptions about who they are. Vanessa thought you were just an elderly widow. She had no idea who she was really dealing with. None of us are just one thing, Daniel. We're all the sum of our experiences, our skills, our choices." "I know, and Mom, your choices were incredible. The way you handled everything, the evidence you gathered, the case you built, it was amazing." After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my kitchen and allowed myself to feel proud. Not arrogant, not boastful, but genuinely proud of how I'd handled one of the worst moments of my life. Vanessa had tried to make me feel weak, confused, helpless. She'd tried to use my age as a weapon against me, tried to convince everyone that being 68 meant being vulnerable and incompetent. Instead, I'd proven that being 68 meant having 68 years of life experience. It meant having professional skills honed over 3 decades. It meant having the wisdom to know when to act, and when to wait, when to fight, and when to strategize. It meant being exactly the kind of person Vanessa should never have targeted. 9 years after the theft, I received an invitation to speak at a national conference on elder abuse prevention. The conference was in Washington, D.C., bringing together law enforcement, legislators, advocates and survivors from across the country. My presentation was on the final day. To a room of over 300 people, I told my story, showed the evidence I'd gathered, explained the investigation process. I talked about the importance of documentation, of trusting your instincts, of refusing to accept the role of helpless victim. But I ended with something different. "I want to talk about what we lose when we underestimate elderly people," I said. "When Vanessa Miller targeted me, she assumed that being 68 made me an easy mark. She assumed my age meant weakness, confusion, helplessness. But what she failed to understand is that age means experience. It means accumulated knowledge. It means decades of surviving, adapting, and learning. When society teaches us that elderly people are automatically vulnerable, automatically confused, automatically in need of protection, we create the conditions for predators like Vanessa to thrive. We teach adult children to doubt their parents. We teach law enforcement to dismiss reports from elderly victims. We teach predators that targeting older people is low risk and high reward. But the truth is exactly the opposite. Elderly people aren't automatically vulnerable. We're often the strongest people in our communities. We've survived decades of challenges. We've built skills, relationships and wisdom that younger people are still developing. When Vanessa threatened me, she didn't count on me having 30 years of fraud investigation experience. She didn't count on me having the strategic thinking to build an irrefutable case. She didn't count on me having the courage to fight back. She underestimated me, and that was her biggest mistake. So here's what I want everyone in this room to understand. When we protect elderly people, we're not protecting helpless victims. We're protecting powerful, experienced, wise individuals who deserve to have their reports taken seriously, their competence respected, and their strength acknowledged. The best way to prevent elder abuse isn't to treat elderly people as fragile. It's to respect them as formidable. Because that's what we are. The room erupted in applause. People stood. Several elderly women in the audience were crying. Afterward, dozens of people approached me, survivors wanting to share their stories, law enforcement officers wanting advice on cases, adult children apologizing for having doubted their parents. One woman, probably in her late 70s, gripped my hands. "Thank you," she said fiercely. "Thank you for saying we're not fragile. I'm so tired of being treated like I'm breakable just because I'm old." "You're not breakable," I replied. "You're experienced. There's a difference." That night, I video called Daniel from my hotel room. "How did the presentation go?" he asked. "It went well. Really well. I'm proud of you, Mom. You know that, right? Not just for what you did with Vanessa, but for everything you've done since. The advocacy, the legislation, the presentations. You've turned something terrible into something meaningful. It was the only way I knew how to process it." I said honestly, I couldn't just move on and pretend it hadn't happened. I needed to use it, to make it mean something. And you have. You've helped so many people. After we hung up, I sat in my hotel room and thought about the journey I'd been on for the past 9 years, from victim to investigator, advocate, from someone who'd been threatened into silence, to someone who refused to be quiet. I thought about the moment in my kitchen when Vanessa had threatened me, when she told me no one would believe a confused old lady. I thought about how afraid I'd been in that moment, how powerless. And then I thought about everything that had happened since. The case I'd built, the trial I'd won, the legislation I'd inspired, the hundreds of people I'd helped. Vanessa had been wrong about everything. I wasn't confused. I wasn't helpless. I wasn't easy to manipulate or silence. I was 77 years old. I had survived grief, betrayal, and an attempt to destroy my credibility and my freedom, and I had emerged stronger, more purposeful, more determined than ever. I was exactly the kind of person Vanessa Miller should never have underestimated. And I would spend the rest of my life making sure other predators understood that mistake. 10 years after Vanessa stole from me, I received a letter, not from her this time, but from Patricia Chen. "Dear Eleanor," it began, "it's been 10 years since we first connected over what Vanessa did to us. 10 years since we turned our victimization into advocacy. 10 years since we refused to be silent. I wanted to write and tell you what these 10 years have meant to me. My relationship with my son is stronger than ever. I've become an advocate in my own community. I've helped 3 other women recognize and report elder fraud. I've lived a full, purposeful, meaningful life. None of that would have happened if you hadn't fought back. If you hadn't built that case. If you hadn't shown me that being a victim and being powerless aren't the same thing. Thank you, Eleanor. Thank you for your courage, your intelligence, and your refusal to accept the role Vanessa tried to force you into. With love and gratitude, Patricia." I read the letter 3 times, then called Patricia. We talked for over an hour, remembering, reflecting, celebrating how far we'd come. "We did something important," Patricia said, "not just for ourselves, but for everyone who comes after us." "We did," I agreed. "We proved that elderly people aren't easy targets. We're dangerous opponents." After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where this whole journey had begun 10 years ago, and allowed myself to feel satisfied, not happy about what had happened, but satisfied with how I'd responded. Vanessa had tried to steal more than my money. She tried to steal my dignity, my credibility, my relationship with my son. She tried to make me feel weak and helpless and confused. Instead, I'd proven that I was strong and strategic and absolutely clear-minded. I was Eleanor Morrison. I was 77 years old, and I was nobody's victim. I picked up my phone and called Daniel. "Hey honey, want to come over for dinner tomorrow? I'm making your dad's recipe for pot roast." "I'd love that, Mom. See you tomorrow." I hung up and looked around my kitchen. The same kitchen where Richard and I had built a life. The same kitchen where I'd raised Daniel. The same kitchen where Vanessa had threatened me. And the same kitchen where I decided to fight back. That decision, made in a moment of fear and anger 10 years ago, had changed everything. It had changed my life, changed legislation, changed how law enforcement handled elder fraud cases. It had helped dozens, maybe hundreds of people. All because I'd refused to be silent. All because I'd remembered who I was. Not just someone's mother or someone's victim, but Eleanor Morrison, senior fraud investigator with 30 years of experience hunting people exactly like Vanessa. The sun was setting outside my window, casting golden light across my kitchen table. I made myself a cup of tea and sat down with a sense of deep peace. Tomorrow I had another presentation scheduled at a senior center. Next week I was meeting with the legislative committee about expanding elder fraud protections. Next month I was speaking at another national conference. The work continued. It would always continue because predators like Vanessa would always exist, but so would people like me. People who refused to be easy targets, who fought back with intelligence and strategy, who turned victimization into advocacy. I sipped my tea and smiled. Vanessa Miller had made one phone call that she thought would silence me forever. Instead, I'd made one phone call that ruined her life. And in the process, I'd found my purpose, my strength, and my voice. I was 77 years old. I was strong. I was wise. I was dangerous to anyone who underestimated me. And I wasn't done yet.